cooking is a good example. You have all these tools. If you don't have like a good recipe, if you don't have the willingness, if you don't have, the time, it doesn't matter if you have the tools. You won't make it happen.
Welcome to Latinx in Power, a podcast that will share stories of amazing Latinx leaders. Hosted by Thaisa Fernandes, a proud Latina in tech, program, and product manager living in Silicon Valley and sharing her experiences.
Welcome to Latinx in Power.
Hi, Thaisa. It's a pleasure to be here. It's always great to talk about design and about experience with the...
Amazing. I'm so happy to have you here. Today, I'm going to talk with Jane Vita. She has a bachelor's degree in graphic design. Jane has 2 masters, one in web design and the other in service innovation and design. She's also a PhD student at Aalto University in New Media. Jane is a design director at Digitalist Group Network and is based in Helsinki, Finland, which is where we first met. And I couldn't be happier to talk with her today. So I want to first start asking you, what does it mean to be a Latina for you?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I think it's about us, of course, our communication. We love, like collaboration. We love this kind of sharing. And I think we're very resilient. And I think this is the part of being Latino that I love most. Because things are not always easy, right? So we always have this kind of feeling that things can be done at a certain point. We don't get this frustrating first place, even though we might feel a little bit, maybe overwhelming, but still, I think we are very resilient, and we always find this solution in the end of the tunnel, right? We always look for that, at least.
Yeah, I agree with you. Resilience, it's one thing that it's pretty common between us. What do you think is your unique skill that has helped you become successful?
Oh, I think I learned to be comfortable with uncomfortable. People ask me what I feel sometimes, that all these changes in my life. I think I'm good on putting things together and making things happen. And I do this for my clients as well. So it's things that I do all the time. I have to find the pieces, that I need to put together, and I'll put those pieces together. And this applies in many ways in my life, I think. I'm always catching pieces,
This is an important skill, being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And I never thought about that in the context or design. It is so interesting.
It's about the design itself, right? We have this kind of fuzziness phase where we don't know much, right? But we need to be comfortable with that, right? Being as a designer. So I think I learned very early in life that things are not always clear, and we are the responsibles to make things more clear for ourselves. So I think that's the reason I kind of start getting more used to it. So it makes me a little bit more comfortable than others sometimes, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And what advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a career in design?
Good one. I would say really, be open to learn, be open to, understand, and be open to not guess in first place, put your assumptions as really assumptions, and make sure that you validate your assumptions, not be so egocentric sometimes. We think we go very quickly sometimes for a solution, but I would consider things that comes so obvious as experiments. Let's try this out. Let's, make some ways of making tangibility on things that we believe in first place. But still, validate that, not, just roll it out. I think that for the designers, sometimes we are not so patient. And for companies as well, right? The companies, when they hire us, they want to get things so fast out. And they, of course, failure is good. But it's not excuse to not do the good things in first place sometimes, right? We just need to try our best. And empathy is also something I would advise people to build a really, you don't need to understand the other's perspective, but it's also about hearing others, listening and really getting consideration that other people, they think different than you. It's not about you not believing yourself, but also, consider others' perspective and make it things more plural, more diverse. That's the important thing to consider as well.
What is the first thing someone who is thinking about transitioning to design should keep in mind?
I think there are a few things, right? I think all the professionals, they have things that makes you a better communicator, let's say problem solving. But at the same time, there are things that helps you to create things like your methods, your toolbox, your skills and so on. So the tools that you have to learn, each company, they have the preferable tools, like the preferred softwares, right? Like platforms that they are using. So of course, this is a learning that you carry on and it changes, something better will come and you have to kind of evolve on that. But those are only things that enable you to do the work. But then there's the other soft skills that you have to build, right? Your resilience, on like going after, this information that you need, the kind of openness you have, to actually receive these informations, to make sense of it, system thinking, trend thinking, futures thinking, you have to build, understand like an impact. And there's so much that it's important you to think about. That's not only the tools you learn in 2-3 weeks, right? And you get some like UI templates and sometimes like things that are ready-made that you could benefit from. So I truly believe that design is much than that. So if someone is joining like now, if you want to be a successful like a UX designer, I would say that you should be able to prototype, should be able to make your ideas tangible so you are a better communicator as well. If you didn't have the luxury to study design, and your choice were not in design field in first place, you might not have this experience of learning the root of design itself, those pillars. It's like a constant learning, right? It's something that you're going to join the field and you have to adapt all the time. So things that I learned, like the tools especially, that I learned many years ago are not the same ones I'm using today. So I think that put us in the same place as a craft maker, but in terms of experience and this kind of like situations in life and the kind of solutions and knowing the directions, it's built with experience, right? So I think there is this we need to do. We have to experience things and learn from there, learn from others as well. So I think this is important.
This is a really good advice. I can imagine that for a lot of people, when they think about transition to design, the first thing that comes to their mind is just the tools. Like people are using Figma now, I should learn about Figma.
And I think it's the tool of the moment, right? So you should learn that, of course. So you can make things happen, right? Of course, it comes to knowing how to extract information, from stakeholders, knowing how to extract, this kind of value creation, the value, the experience for the users, the customers, right? But you should be able to learn those skills as well, right? It's a constant learning. And so for some people, this might be disappointing. People might think that they don't need to learn, but this is a profession that you are constantly changing and learning and evolving. The entire experience itself is changing, right? Because we are learning that many of the things we build on the wants are not the right thing to do, right? People say, I want this, I want that. And I'm like, oh, but maybe what you want is not good for you. So we are not building any value for you. So how does this work? So if you are pushing things just to make people more addictive or using something more, it's not like a truly impacted, like in a good way, their lives. So you're not building any value. You might put a lot of money on the company, which is good as well, right? Because you have employees, you have people that, work for the company. So in some way, the companies, they benefit from being profitable. It's not a bad thing. But what if we look at other things, alternatives that makes this kind of chain, work a little bit better, a little bit more holistic thinking, right? Like sometimes we tend to focus too much in one direction, and maybe it's not the best direction in the long term. So I think there is a thought on that nowadays. That's not only customer centric, right? It's not only company centric either, but it's interesting things that people are discussing.
I love that. So you participated in many design conferences as a speaker. And what's your favorite thing about these opportunities?
I never considered myself a professional speaker. That's true. And I think this was one way of how I could, maybe get better on communication. Because I think when I in first place, I wasn't ever like so good on I learned English when very, very late in, when I was already 20, when I could afford, classes. And so I started learning already working. So not much time to dedicate to it. And then when I moved to Finland, this actually hit me, nicely, let's say. And then I had to dive into that and, started communicating. I think this in the sense of language, really, use the language as a source for your communication. And I think being a speaker puts you in this uncomfortable and vulnerable, and it's challenging. I see that there is some respect you build. It's so lovely to see people inspired, and that actually motivates me to go again and go again. And all these dialogues that are generated after, those talks, people, they contact me, they come and ask about things. And Jane, if I see that there is a positive influence that happens when I go to those talks. It's a way of giving back to the community everything I learned, everything I have been learning, from others. It's not easy. And I don't think for me, it might not be ever easy. But I enjoy a lot. It makes me happy to see people getting involved with some of your thoughts and pushes, right? Because my thoughts are not only my thoughts, are thoughts from the community. If I can, repeat and, progress on that, I see the progress happening with others as well, right? If I stay on my desk and don't talk about those things, I'm being on my desk, not spreading.
This is really amazing. I couldn't agree more with you. I truly believe that information should be shared. And do you think you started to see language in a different way, not just language, but communication when you started to use your second language?
As much as I learn, I think English, I can see that it's not only there, right? It's learning English itself is a language, is a tool. It's like a software we were discussing before. It helps you to kind of, cooking is a good example. You have all these tools. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a good recipe, if you don't have the willingness, if you don't have, the time, it doesn't matter if you have the tools. You won't make it happen, right? So I think English itself, as Portuguese, they don't make things happen by itself. Knowing and speaking, it's important. Going to the war without any weapons, right? If you have your tools, it's a good one thing. Communication is more than that. As you learn English and you start speaking and you get, sometimes it's not the grammar that pursue the message, right? Sometimes the situation or certain thoughts you bring to the table, right? Perception, what's happening, awareness. Awareness is so important. It's you don't need to communicate sometimes, just maybe you have some gestures, you have some actions. Actions are so important. And it's part of communication. The body is part of the communication. It's articulation, maybe debate, we really needs to, articulate and, resilience. Pursuing your ideas further. It's also something important, right? I think if you really truly believe this is something good for the customer and it has a great impact, be resilient. Start seeding little by little. Be resilient, build a strategy. Take little steps and, further and further and take them forward.
Yeah, I remember when I was learning English and someone said to me, when you are able to make someone laugh in English, you know that your English is better or good. And then I was obsessed to make people laugh in my second language. And what is the one common myth about design that you want to debunk?
There is a difference than wants and needs, right? And I think this is a thing that people get wrong. So wants is something that I want, but it's not what I need. Because what I need is something that has an impact, right? And it's when we say impact, of course, we mean impact in a long term. Of course, it could be a momentary impact, right? Might make me happy, but when we talk about life, we're like, okay, it's a cycle, right? So I think when we say want, we need to make sure that we create value. I think in service design is something very important. Is the value creation. Value creation is something that is an exchange of values, and this exchange of values is like, it has many actors. It has many, so it's a collective. It's not like individual. So when you think about the person, you think about the society, you think about the community, you think about, it's not only the user as a center, but the situation itself, like the impact this creates, the entire chain. So I think it's a little bit more holistic. So I think the myth in this is the user-centric design itself. I think it's great to understand the user stories, the task flow. So we say, okay, this is something I need to print. That's it. So how to print? You get it, the printing screen is like most adorable possible. But then when it comes to things that is a good paper, is you're printing what printing, is this print sustainable? The entire problem, like on printing things itself, is there a better option? You know what I mean? So those things we are not really going after when we are just printing as a task, right? When we print as an experience, it's much more than that. What I do in my printer when when the ink costs the same amount as the printer, buy another printer perhaps, right? A better one. No, maybe. But it's very tempting, I must say. Like when we go after the ink sometimes, it's like, my goodness, I should just, get a better printer.
This is an interesting mindset.
So it's not, I think the companies, they tend to concentrate on tests, right? And not in experience. So this is a myth as well. People think that tests are experience and they are not.
It's fascinating how the conversation changed from I need to print something to should I buy a printer, and then deciding where you're going to print the thing or which paper you're going to use, and later on even rethinking the need of printing something.
Oh, there is a lot of like a user consciousness about, and this is happening nowadays, right? The change of the power of it's on the customer point of view. It's a conscious that they have on saying, should I print that in first place? Mm-hmm. So I think the good business would bring these thoughts, if they learn that the customers are in this mindset, how this changes, what kind of change this provokes on their organization. It kind of brings other considerations.
How would you describe the difference between service design and other types of design?
Oh, I couldn't start without saying design is design. As much I kind of surface different areas of design, and I can say this, I think I could say this with property because I didn't do anything in life that wasn't like designing, So I started as a designer and I continued. I had this take on like marketing in the very beginning, but still I was working with, newsletters, I was working with the design identity, right? Like the logos and marketing material. So I'm still like there in the design. And I had this passion about fashion in the beginning. I had the passion about, some like a wearable. It's interesting to see that design itself, they have its pillars. And then people, of course, during these years, I think we focus depending on the need, like on the need of the market, on the need of the profession itself. We focus on different areas. So I would say that when you learn design, you learn the 4 pillars, right? The design management, the design plan, design resourcing, and design execution. Of course, design thinking is an old gem here. But let's say when IDEO started popular, democratic, like more popular, right? They were bringing design to the strategy level. But strategy as a focus is like thinking about what you're going to build, your solution. In the strategic level, when actually you're when before planning, how does this impact your business? How customers, and of course it's customer-centric. We always build something for someone to use. I think in the beginning we're so paying attention to the execution level of like influencing, converting, understand like a focusing, learning process, how people learn better. So you really, it's ability, right? So you really, really brought this up quite nicely. But then wasn't this strategic because we were not thinking about things in a long term? We're not thinking about things on how this would impact. And what happened was like we would take something in use, and this wasn't like the thing that people they didn't need that. It was really a push, so then they thought that, okay, doing a good marketing campaign would reach a lot of people. So of course, if you reach like thousands, if it's 1% of thousands, it's a good number, right? So I think marketing played a very, very good on making people wanting things, right? Oh, this is something that I could benefit from because it was very appealing, attractive. As design kind of becomes more essential in business, mostly because of technology as well, right? Because the technology itself has a design touch in it. You see it's growing and it's becoming more strategic. It's becoming more influencing and more important piece of the shaping itself, right? And when it comes to service design, I think the service design comes to complement this thinking and making this a more holistic experience. Like, I would say like a more holistic and more strategic way of approaching, because you consider employees' experience, you consider operations, how actually create value, how deliver this value, how other things that we we don't have access as a UX designers, right? Like when we say, I'm actually building screens, I don't have access to all these other pieces of the business that I could consider. And then as a service design, you don't necessarily need to build anything, but you have to kind of put these pieces together. It's a lot of articulation, a lot of revealing, a lot of collaboration, a lot of kind of communication gaps that you need to kind of bridge. So there is a take on the design that goes a little bit beyond what we have been doing so far. So I think it comes to as additional to, it's still design, but it comes to makes us to do even better job.
I love your answer. I think service design, it's so interesting. Tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear these questions. The first one is favorite memory.
Oh, my favorite memory is also a scary one. I think this was a mark on my life when I moved to Finland in first place, and I was looking for, actually I had this like interview at Fjord, and my English was so poor, and I had a lot of experience. So at this point I thought either they would hire me or I go for another profession. Maybe I'll go to work in a cafe, or maybe I'm gonna go to do some other things, right? They just said, Jane, you're good. You should work for us. And I thought this was like a time in life that I didn't need to change, right? And I just had to be a little bit more patient and take a step back till I could really communicate my designs. The designs were there. I knew how to use the tools, right? And I could build the screens, but I couldn't articulate yet in the best way possible. So I think this was a moment of trust in first place, that I could do a good job. And I'm really happy that I had the chance. So I think this was one of my favorite memories.
I was talking with another person I interviewed for the podcast, and she mentioned about the importance of having someone who opens the door. And after this door is open, you're going to find your way and do your job and like grow. But you need someone to first open the door, the window, like whatever, something.
Oh, and life has many doors, believe me. I think the life is a constant kind of door opening experience, which is great. I think all of us are now facing this, right?
To me, this is the most amazing part, is when we start to open doors for others. I love that. A great advice.
Even though we need to be authentic, we need to be, I think this is something, be yourself, be ourselves. And I think we need also to be like selfish sometimes, right? And I think this is something we can be. Even though we want to be ourselves, you can be egocentric, right? There is our new generation. I think we we had so much, I think, in design back in the days to actually build the trust we have today in design, right? I think there is a lot of things that I see, you know, especially, you know, if you are not willing to build to others. So I think the design, when we build something, we are building for another person. It's not for ourselves. Or like for construction companies, even though I talk with their employees, with builders, with people that I haven't ever, you know, worked in the construction before. Suddenly I was 3 years working with construction companies, right? Different brands. And I was, I can't say that I know construction nowadays, right? Like the process and a lot of stuff and the real estate and so on, how they sell and many of these things. But it's far from our comfort zone, from what we know. So we can't be able, and people, they feel, I think people sometimes are very picky as well. I want to, you know, work for this company that does it and not for machinery, for instance, like for mining companies or you know, and that it's interesting because when you choose to be designers, like a doctor, right? You're there to cure patients, you know, to cure, depending on the sickness they have, they might get your specialization, right? But as a designers, you're also building things to others. So I think we have to put this mindset that we need to learn about people, about industry, about what's important for them. And this should be the pleasure, you know, on what you're doing, not like if my good in Figma. Of course, transitions are great, you know, you are ending the point, but you cannot do, if you choose to be a motion designer, you still need to kind of pursue and convey a story, a message. So it's not about aesthetics only, right? It's about messaging. It's about, you know, the communication we were talking before, right? How you bridge those things. So I think that skills only help you to, like your craft skills only help you with that. But I think we have we have a bigger challenge.
And Scandinavia.
Well, you know, and they came to my mind straight away. It's like design patterns. They have patterns in fabric. They have patterns in ceramic. They have patterns everywhere. You see, you know, like it's a very systematic and effective way of, you know, creating these kind of platforms. And they're good on building these foundations. I think this is what makes me sometimes, like as a Brazilian, I see the complexity overcoming the foundation. And sometimes, like when you lead to this reality, it's not as complex as this complexity that all these thoughts that are put on top, right? So if you manage to get this foundation, I think they're really good on finding this foundation. And they can be very diverse after that because they are tailoring, you know? So I think that's the dynamic I see here, and it's constantly evolving. It's easy to evolve when you have the pillars, you know, how the structure of the building sometimes just gets, you know, the pillars are still there. They still need the pillars about ages, right? They always needed that. But the material, you know, the things on top, those are the things that evolve, how this looks like and so. So I think that they're good on that.
Your superpower.
I think it's perseverance, you know. I think it's perseverance, and I would say smiling as well, because even when I'm nervous, I smile, and people think I'm happy, but I'm super nervous. It's like,
I couldn't relate more to that. Sometimes people ask me, "Are you always happy?" I was like, "No, I'm actually really grumpy right now."
But let them think that. Let them think that.
What are the best resources that have helped you along the way?
I have been, you know, in the design community, like RCA for quite long. I have been in the Service Design Network for quite long. I think there's a lot of dialogue there. I follow, you know, the videos from conference. I go to the conference. You know, I listen to podcasts. There are a few here, like UX Lab, like blogs, right? Like a UX Collective is a great one. I follow trends like from Trends Watching. It's good. For instance, McKinsey has like a regular, you know, articles around the industry, changes in the industry.
Really good resources. So we have design communities, podcasts, conferences, and blogs. And how about books? Do you have any book you recommend?
If I tell you about some books, I like the one that kind of blows my mind, the Good to Great book. I think it was a great one to read from Jim Collins. It shows that when you're doing good is where you can get disrupted, right? Because you don't see that you can get better. So there's a lot of course, thoughts on that. But changing from good to great is more difficult than when you're doing so bad that you need to prove to great already, right? So it's easier to go from bad, like something that's not working, to something that would work perfectly. When you are great, good, it's good enough. So people, they are on enough. So they don't go to great, right? So they don't see, it's like in the blind spots, right?
And service design resources you recommend?
Well, then the service design, doing and thinking, like from Mark's taking the on. He was my teacher, so it's quite biased. Adam and Marcus and Jacob. So I like the touch they have on like facilitation, this kind of integrative thinking point of view. I love, that they have in the second book, they have a bunch of, actual practice. What else? I think some of these books that helps you to see the process, like a King Godwin, Designing for the Digital Age. I think it was a great book as well, because it shows, like it's a handbook. So it like those books that have like all the steps and process and methods. It shows so many things. It's a huge one, but it's great. I like that. Oh, the liminal thinking is a good one. I actually have the note here. The liminal thinking also shows you like this kind of perspectives, and I think those are great. People are different, right? And sometimes like what is obvious for us is not obvious for others. And actually our obvious things are not always they're not similar, right? Sometimes they come from very different mountains. So you have to see the reality, what is happening in the reality,
I love your tips. I love when people recommend books. So I'm going to link all the books you mentioned to the description of this episode. And I'm really happy about that.
Oh, great. Great to hear.
What is your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
I have a problem with like saying that I failed something, because I always had the chance to catch up, right? So I think I'm lucky in that sense that I never had a big fail that wasn't good for me. It's a funny thing. Sometimes I think I had a good choice and this was very positive, but ended up being a very bad choice. So I think when it didn't work, I was free of it, So, and then I ended up doing something else, which was better for me. I think I would say in terms of what people know as a failure, I had this experience like back in like very early in my career, that as many, designers, you end up doing being entrepreneur straight after university. So you have your friends from university, you get together, you build your business. So I did the same. I had 2 years a company called Next Media. They're still there, but it didn't work for me. I think I had it to make money, right? I couldn't cope with the uncertainty of the business itself by this point. Even though we were doing super great, I think if we would take the same direction, they changed a little bit the direction from what we ideate in the beginning, we could be like a pioneer, right, in the industry. I think it was difficult for me to leave. I consider this was quite early decision I made in life to be entrepreneur. But at the same time, it was really good, you see, so it was a great experience. And I think I learned so much. I learned to be independent. I learned to be, to take things together and, make things happen, because I didn't have much like wealth, to go after. So I had to be independent in the first place. So I think it gives you this kind of toughness a little bit that you need sometimes to make things happen. And I think this wasn't really a failure, but I failed on like continuing the business. I'm lucky to say that I never had a big thing that happened that impacted in a way that I couldn't catch up later. So I think being prepared, I think it's important, and being motivated as well to go after. I think sometimes I feel some of these failures in life makes you a little bit depressed. You might not feel that you're in a good shape to kind of move on, but I think we have to trust ourselves, right? And we have to do the next step. And sometimes not easy. I know it's not easy, but just doing the next step, you're already influencing your next in life, right? So I think it's important to take these steps.
And what does it make a successful team, in your opinion?
Oh, I think the synergy, right? I think it's like any team. I used to play basketball. So I think the synergy between people, how they read each other, how you embrace each other and you actually there for the others as well. You're not against the person. I think you look at this person as like, well, why they're not doing well or why it's happening. You build it, but you can open a great communication. So, we were saying about like a safe environment so you can share your thoughts, where you can maybe not feel good and share your thoughts. And someone won't tell you're weak or won't tell you, say that you're exposing something, because you're in the safe environment. You're exposing to your colleagues and you're like looking for a collective solution. And then you're there together as a team. I think that it's hard when you are in a team that even though it's an effective team, if you share a thought, you become someone that criticizes or someone that, there's competition in this team, or there is, some kind of career ladder, someone, they think more about career ladder than anything else, right? There is, this dynamics should happen. When the team gains, when the team goes well, everybody will go well, and then the company will go well, and this just kind of grows. So I think a good team has a synergy. They can be themselves, and they can expose their ideas, and they can, dialogue and discuss and debate. And
what is helping you to cope during this pandemic situation?
What I said, I'm my family. I'm like with them all the time. I think it's been amazing, that we can count with each other. I think this is the first time in life I really, dedicating my time to my kids. And to be honest, like I'm not traveling, so I didn't. Well, I could go somewhere, but we just thought we want because we want to explore Helsinki. So I have been in museums with my kids, just to, it's a pandemic situation. Of course, there's like limited people that can be there. All our precautions we're taking. So my friends as well. So I can tell my friends. My friends are like, I have friends in Brazil still. I have friends in Canada. I have friends here. I have friends like in Europe. So in all other places, even like when it's remote, we have been communicating so much more. I don't know why we were always like remote in some ways, but it's funny because people just got used to communicate with friends more. So I think it's a great thing that's happening.
That was amazing. We are getting to the end. I want to thank you for your time. I learned a lot. That was really fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to talk with you, Thais. And I wish you like all the success with this podcast. It's so important that our Latino community gets together, especially US designers, because we can offer so much, right? And we can actually like with this role, I think we really, really need like a little bit more global and local. It's like thinking global and acting local.
In summary, I want to highlight 4 important things that Jane shared with us today. The first one, the importance of communication and soft skills that help you to be a better designer. Second one, learning the tools, but also the process, how to build value, and the importance of holistic thinking. Third one, the difference between wants and needs. That was really interesting. And the fourth, people and companies, they tend to concentrate on tasks, not the experience. So think about that. That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. We'll have more interviews with amazing Latinx every first Tuesday of the month. Check our website, latinxempower.com, to hear more. Don't forget to share comments and feedback, always with kindness. See you soon.